10 spine-chilling midnight shift tales. Discover the terrifying secrets that haunt your sleep. As Sarah trudged through the dimly lit halls of Cedar Falls Memorial Hospital, a thunderstorm raged outside. The wind howled like a restless spirit, but deep inside, it was a different kind of unrest that chilled her bones. Her midnight shift creaked open with the first sinister element, an eerie flicker of lights that cast long shadows, moving as if alive, a prelude to something impending. Murmurs danced in the air, whispers brushing against her skin, taunting her with secrets too sinister to grasp. Tonight felt different. The usual bustle of her fellow nurses echoed emptily around her, each footstep resounding louder than normal against the sterile tiles. She glanced at the clock. The minutes crawled, laughter from the evening shift fading into unsettling silence. The break room, once a sanctuary of warm chatter, now felt like a trap. The fluorescent lights buzzed, flickering intermittently, barely keeping the dark at bay. "Just a storm," she muttered, trying to ignore the prickle of fear inching up her spine. But this was no ordinary night. Each flicker seemed to signal something sinister lurking just beyond her peripheral vision. In the abandoned wing of the hospital, where echoes of the past intertwined with present dread, an unseen presence stalked the shadows, and Sarah was its unwitting witness. An hour passed, then another. The whispers grew louder, more pronounced, words twisted into a fray of disjointed sentences. "Help us, don't look!" They clawed at her sanity, mixing with the rhythmic beeping of heart monitors and the ominous creaking of the building. Her heart raced, her palms slick with sweat as she eyed the unfamiliar dark at the end of the corridor. The abandoned wing. Shivers ran down her spine, a primal warning urging her to flee. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." With newfound urgency, Sarah's feet moved of their own accord toward the looming darkness. Her palms trembled as she pushed against the heavy door to the abandoned wing. Dust motes swirled in the stale air, touched by the faint beams of lightning flashing outside. But with every step, icy tendrils of dread reached out to her, urging her to turn back. As she advanced, a voice pierced through the silence. "Zoe." It resonated deep within her, a call from the depths of her worst fears. As memories flooded her mind, her daughter's face twisted in worry, Sarah recalled the dreadful lines Zoe had scrawled just hours before, "Don't look outside." She felt paralyzed, caught between her duty as a nurse and the raging storm within her heart. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, momentarily illuminating the grim past hidden in peeling wallpaper and rusted bed frames. But in that brief glimmer of light, she spotted a figure, a fleeting shadow darting out of view. Panic gripped her gut. Were those whispers warnings? A hidden truth? The storm raged outside, yet the terror inside her felt worse, encroaching upon her very soul. As her breaths quickened, decay danced within her mind. She had to uncover the truth, not just to save Zoe, but to escape the spiraling darkness that tightened around her throat. What secrets lay buried deeper than the abandoned rubble? What choices lingered in the shadows of Cedar Falls? Sarah knew she stood on the edge of a revelation that would change everything. Would she confront the lurking malevolence, or become another whisper lost to the night? The door creaked open, revealing darkness that felt thick enough to slice through. Sarah hesitated for a moment, heart thudding against her ribs like a frantic drum. The air was stale, carrying a scent of mold mixed with something she couldn't quite place, something sickly sweet. She stepped inside, each movement heavy with the weight of dread. Lightning illuminated the room sporadically, casting brief flashes of warped figures and grotesque shadows that danced on the walls. Every crack of thunder seemed to growl at her, as if warning her that she was not alone. "Zoe!" she called, her voice trembling, swallowed by the stillness that followed. Hoping against hope, she strained to hear a reply, but only the echoes responded, mocking her. Stray thoughts flickered through her mind, recollections of playful laughter, bedtime stories, and the warmth of her daughter's embrace. A shiver ran down her spine, pulling her deeper into the corridor of memories. "Help us," came the whisper again, clearer now, chilling her to the core. Sarah's heart sank. It no longer just sounded like a plea, it felt insidious, like a trap laid just for her. She moved cautiously down the hallway, eyes darting from one end to the other, half expecting something to lunge out at her. The floors groaned underfoot, a ghostly echo of tormented souls. A door on her right jutted slightly open, its tarnished handle glinting with malice. An irresistible urge tugged at her, urging her to explore the room beyond. She could feel a tugging at her heart, a dissonance between maternal instinct and self-preservation. With a deep breath, she pushed the door wider. Darkness engulfed her. She fumbled for the light switch, but nothing responded. This part of the hospital felt as if time had stopped. Her cell phone buzzed in her pocket like a captured insect, vibrating against her leg. Frantically, she pulled it out and flicked on the flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, landing on an assortment of discarded hospital beds, twisted metal frames, and dirty linen. And there, sitting in the farthest corner, a figure hunched against the wall. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The light flickered, and the figure's face twisted upward, revealing a ghastly visage, eyes wide with terror, skin stretched tight like parchment, lips curled in a silent scream that seemed to echo through every crevice of the room. "Stay away!" it rasped, voice hoarse and desperate. "Don't look!" Sarah stumbled backward, heart racing. The threshold of horror crossed, she turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind her, trapping her in this nightmarish vision. The figure clawed at the air, thrashing helplessly, its face contorted in anguish, a reflection of everything she feared. "Please, help!" it cried, and Sarah's panic surged. The whispers all around her grew louder, an unholy choir beckoning her closer, luring her towards dread. In the chaos of raking fears, a sudden realization gripped her. This wasn't just a random spirit. No, this was connected to her own failings, her daughter's distress. The storm outside intensified, and the lights above began to flicker violently. She had to escape. She had to save Zoe. But how could she fight what she didn't understand? The shadows grew deeper, pulling her toward the center of a horrifying revelation. Sarah realized with terror that she was at the heart of something unspeakable, entangled in the very fabric of fear itself. Would she fight or succumb to the whispers? In that moment, as louder screams filled her ears, she knew there was no turning back. What awaited her on the other side of the darkness? What did she really need to confront? The whispers swirled around Sarah, wrapping around her mind like a vice. "Help us!" echoed again, this time layered with a chorus of voices, each one thicker than the last, each carrying a hint of despair that seeped into her bones. Trembling, she pressed her back against the door, the wood cold and unforgiving, her heart hammering like a trapped bird. "Get out!" the figure screamed, its voice a haunting mixture of urgency and terror. But where was she to go? Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet that instinct was met with the chilling realization. Fleeting glimpses of shadows darted back and forth, teasing their escape just beyond her line of sight. "Zoe!" she cried, desperate, hoping that innocence would cut through this dark veil. The walls murmured her name back, taunting her with each syllable. The flashlight flickered again, its grip on illumination wavering, and with every pulse of light, she could see more grotesque shapes moving just beyond the edge of her vision. They wore the shapes of humans, pale and twisted, faces frozen in expressions of unimaginable horror. She breathed in sharply, the sweet odor now mingling with something more metallic, thick and suffocating. Panic clawed at her throat. Scenes from the past danced through her mind, moments with Zoe that now felt like ghosts, tender memories corroded with the weight of dread. "Help us!" The voice shook, imbued with pain. Without thinking, Sarah edged closer to the figure, her heart 2 beats away from an explosion. The figure's eyes were wide, filled with an emotion she couldn't decipher: fear, pain, but also a spark, a flicker that begged for connection. "Not her!" it pleaded, shaking. "You can't save her, you must run! You don't belong here!" But Sarah's resolve quaked. Zoe needed her. Should she heed the warning of this entity, a new form of heartbreak whispering through its frantic plea? Through the shadowy haze, she struggled to focus. The cries of the entity became a chorus of lost souls, tired and broken, drawing her into their web of despair. The stench intensified. Sarah stumbled unexpectedly, her foot scrambling over something cold and unyielding. She shined the light down to find a doll, its glassy eyes cracked and empty, a tattered dress hanging loosely. Zoe's, she gasped, bending to pick it up. A wave of dread washed over her. Had this belonged to her daughter? The shadows around her convulsed, a heartbeat quickening in the darkness. "You shouldn't have come!" they shrieked, filling the room with clamor. No longer able to control herself, she whipped around, calling out, "Zoe!" But the name fell flat, smothered by the cacophony of dread surrounding her. The walls pressed closer, shifting, like the structure itself bore witness to her decay. "Get out! Get out now!" echoed from the walls, the figure's voice merging with the chorus. The lights surged with a sudden burst of energy, blinding and horrific, revealing every twisted face in the room, their mouths a silent scream. With a burst of raw will, Sarah lunged at the door, pounding on it, begging it to give way. The handle rattled, but wouldn't budge. The darkness closed in, fierce and suffocating, and with every second, every frantic attempt to escape, she felt the weight of despair dragging her deeper. What if she never found Zoe? What if the shadows she now faced claimed her as one of their own? Suddenly, there was a loud crash, vibrating through the air. The door splintered open, and a wave of freezing wind flooded the room, breaking the dark hold. Sarah stumbled back with the force, but in that split second, she noticed something, a silhouette appearing at the threshold, bathed in piercing light. "Zoe?" As the figure stepped forward, something twisted in the pit of Sarah's stomach. It was there, but not how she remembered. The echo of that sweet, innocent voice felt tainted with an unexplainable dread that coiled tightly around her heart. "Mommy, why are you scared?" came the soft, chilling call. Was this her daughter? Or had the darkness transformed her? As the shadow behind Zoe stretched and twitched, a cold realization struck Sarah. There was no running now. Facing whatever lay beneath the surface was her only choice. Would she embrace what was real or succumb to the haunting of her own mind? "Mommy, why are you scared?" The words twisted in the air, echoing like taunts from an unseen court. Zoe stood there, but she was different, her eyes glossy and vacant, an abyss of something that resembled innocence but masked the darkness just below the surface. Sarah felt her heart constrict. "Zoe, is that really you?" She took a step forward, knees trembling, each stride feeling like a surrender to the suffocating shadows. "Mommy," Zoe repeated, and the shadows behind her lurched forward, swirling like a storm of despair, threatening to pull Sarah inside. The figure that had warned Sarah began to dissolve, its form shifting into the darkness, barely recognizable now. "You promised to find me," Zoe added, the words dripping with an unsettling sweetness laced with malice. The air thickened. Sarah's chest tightened, the scent of rust mingled with the stench of decay. "What happened to you? Where is my Zoe?" The questioning came out frantic, clawing at her throat. "I'm right here, Mommy." Zoe tilted her head, her smile forced yet familiar. "Don't you love me?" The walls quaked at Sarah's mounting terror. "Love you? Of course I do. But this is not you." Panic surged, pushing her back, as the shadows flickered menacingly. "You need to let go. It's so much better here." The child's voice softened, becoming almost seductive, enticing Sarah to simply step forward, embrace the dark, embrace her daughter. "We can be together forever." The chilling allure wrapped around Sarah's mind. In that moment, she glimpsed into the shadows 1,000 faces contorted in agony, pleading through silent screams. Each moment held prisoners, and all of them had been lost to this realm, just like Zoe was now. "No! You're lying!" Sarah yelled, shaking her head violently. The little girl stepped closer, her figure like a moth drawn to a cruel flame. "You're not my baby!" The realization hit hard. This was a mirage born of dread. With a sudden spark of resolve, Sarah instinctively reached out, heart racing, desperate to find something real. But Zoe's voice thickened with rage. Why don't you want to join me? The shadows erupted, swirling like a tempest as if responding to Zoe's distress. Get away from her! Sarah shouted, tears cascading down her cheeks. The release of the doll in her hand seemed trivial now. It clattered to the floor, swallowed by the darkness. In an instant, the shadows surged forward, their movement uncontrolled. They shot toward Sarah, freezing her to the spot. She clenched her fists, feeling the air turn thick and cold, her breath hitching. No, no, and oh! She cried, but it was too late. The chill of despair clung to her skin, invading her mind. Then, like a gust of wind, time warped. Memories of laughter, sunshine, and love began to morph, weaving into twisted reflections of Zoe's gentleness tainted by darkness. Why can't you remember? Came a voice, a whisper smoothed over with deceit and mockery. Suddenly, Sarah sensed a flicker of light in the depths of her heart and urged to fight. Raising her chin, she shouted, I remember every moment. I want to be lost with you. With defiance burning in her veins, she tore her eyes from Zoe's, battling the shadows that threatened to pull her in. Stop! A scream erupted from the depths of her lungs. Get out of my head! The light from Sarah's flashlight flickered back to life, slicing through the darkness. With clarity lancing through her fear, she reached for the shadows creeping toward her, light twisting around her hand like a barrier. I'm not afraid of you. Around her, the whispers dimmed, swirling back, retreating from the sudden surge of light battling despair. For the first time, she saw Zoe's true form beneath the layers of dark, a scared child who needed saving, not one led astray. Help me, Mommy, Zoe spoke softly, head tilted like a lost puppy, a hint of fear underlying her gaze. But as Sarah took a trembling step towards her daughter, a chilling laughter echoed through the room, shattering the moment like fragile glass. A new voice spoke, smooth and silky, You really think you can save her? The shadows reformed, blocking her path, and the weight of dread returned, heavier than before. Stuck between her daughter and the chaotic mass of darkness, Sarah stood anchored in a moment of impending doom. Whatever this thing was, the battle was only beginning. Don't let them take me! Zoe cried, fear rippling through her voice. Sarah hesitated, torn. The darkness pulsed, waiting. Was there a way to save both herself and Zoe? Or had the darkness already made its claim? The air pulsed with tension, a thick mass of choice suspended before her. As the entity snarled in delight, Sarah prepared to fight back in the bleak of despair where hope desperately flickered. What if the only way to truly save Zoe was to confront the very darkness that claimed her? Mommy, Zoe's voice cut through the thickening shadows, its tremor laced with fear. The air changed. It felt alive, swirling around Sarah like a predator closing in. Every instinct screamed for her to run. But where? The darkness was everywhere, wrapping around her like a cloak, waiting to snuff out the flickering light of her resolve. Zoe, I want to let them take you! Sarah shouted, grounding herself in the love she felt for her daughter, pulling the warmth into her heart. She focused on Zoe's eyes, searching desperately for any glimmer of the girl she once knew. The entity's laughter just echoed, almost mocking. You're too late, Mother. She's already mine. It inched closer, tendrils of shadow stretching towards Sarah, bringing with them an ice-cold breath that clawed at her skin. Not yet! She whispered fiercely, thrusting her arm out. The flashlight beam steadied, a thin line of hope against a tide of despair. The darkness skittered back, hissing like 1,000 starving beasts retreating from a flame. For a moment, Sarah's heart raced faster than her mind could catch up. I will get you out of here, Zoe! She stepped forward, channeling the memories of picnics in the sun and laughter inside the living room. Love was the purest light, the strongest weapon. Mommy, help me! Zoe pleaded, reaching out. But her hand trembled, as if caught by invisible chains, the entrapment of the shadows pulling taut. No! Don't give in! Sarah shouted. Desperation clawed in her throat, but she kept moving forward. The shadows recoiled again. With each step, the ground pulsed beneath her, every heartbeat resonating in the air. Time felt liquefied, dragging it down to a near standstill, and for a brief droplet of eternity, she was not alone. She could almost hear a chorus of other lost souls fighting through the chaos. Save us, the words whispered, filling her with power, a collective hope for freedom. Get away from her! She screamed again, anger boiling inside her. The shadows twisted back fiercely, thrumming like a taut string, as if her defiance challenged the very essence of their being. Mommy Zoe's voice wavered, the fear leaking into her tone. The shadows seized upon it, clawing at her daughter's spirit with tendrils that flickered and danced like tongues of fire. No! You will not take her! Sarah launched herself forward, frustration and terror blending into an unstoppable force. The flashlight beam exploded with brilliance, and the shadows began to hiss as if burned. She felt raw, real power surging through her, brighter than the darkest night. But the shadows howled, furious at her defiance. Foolish woman! You think your love can save her? You are too late. A surge of wind whipped through the room, scattered the memories of joy, turning them to ashes. Sarah stumbled as the world shook. Everything wavered, her sense of reality unraveling like a frayed rope. Mommy! Zoe cried, a heartbreaking wail that echoed through the chaos. Suddenly, the darkness ripped apart, forming a ravenous gaping maw behind her daughter. No! Sarah's scream dissolved into the roar of the shadows as they lunged forward, eager to devour the last vestiges of light. And then Sarah saw it. A flicker of silver something gleaming in the shadows. Without thinking, she lunged toward it, instinct guiding her as desperation loomed. Hold on! She yelled through the raging storm that threatened to drown her voice. Zoe's terrified gaze locked on hers, drawing strength from the bond of maternal love, but it was fading fast. Mommy, please! The whirlwind of shadows closed in, ominous and voracious. Clenching her jaw, Sarah thrust the flashlight toward the silver glint. Light burst forth, piercing the dark, but would it be enough? Caught in the cyclone of blindness and rage, Sarah's heart pounded out an urgent prayer. She willed every ounce of power she had left into the light, anchoring herself amid chaos. Would this desperate gamble bring Zoe back? Or was darkness claiming them both, an inescapable fate sealed in the weight of shadows? Don't you dare give up! She screamed, the fury surging through her veins as she fought against the obliterating darkness. But the final answer loomed, closer than breathing. Which would prevail, the flickering light of hope or the insatiable depth of despair? As the shadows stirred, something sinister twisted in the dark, preparing to reveal the true cost of her defiance. If Sarah couldn't save them, what would become of her? The final roar echoed, reverberating as the light dimmed, leaving nothing but a terrible silence. What would happen next? The silence was deafening. For an agonizing moment, Sarah felt untethered, lost in the void, as if time itself had folded inwards, swallowing her whole. The flashlight's beam flickered, struggling against the relentless dark. Panic clawed at her throat. After a lifetime of shielding Zoe, now she was trapped. Zoe? Her voice quivered, fragile as glass. There was no response. A cold sweat dripped down her back as shadows pulsed around her, thick and oppressive. And then, a whisper. Mommy, it was soft, like a breeze ruffling the leaves, but it carried the weight of despair, pulling at her heartstrings. Where are you? Desperation surged through Sarah, igniting a flicker of resolve. She couldn't let the darkness extinguish Zoe's spirit. She spun, searching desperately. The shadows writhed, twisting like serpents, dark and hungry. A gasp escaped her lips as she caught sight of a shimmering edge beneath the relentless waves of darkness. It was the silver glint now pulsing, thrumming with a furious energy. Without thinking, she lunged toward it, her heartbeat echoing in the growing chaos. No! Not again! The entity roared, its voice rising like thunder, a sound that felt as though it could fracture her very soul. You can't fight what's already yours. The shadows shrieked and lunged, ready to envelop her. Sarah shoved her adrenaline-fueled resolve into every fiber of her being. I won't let you take her. The flashlight steadied in her grip, and light poured forth again, more brilliant than before. She thrust it toward the glint, and the darkness seethed like boiling water, hissing furiously. The shadows writhed and twisted, repelled as if burned by fire. "Zoe!" she cried, illuminating the space between them. To her horror, Zoe remained trapped, eyes wide and filled with anguish, like she was caught in a web of despair. The silver glint pulsed brighter. It was a key, a doorway, anything but the wretched clutches of the dark. "Come to the light, sweetheart," Sarah urged, the words flooding her with desperation. Zoe's eyes flickered with recognition. "Mommy, I can't!" Shadows wrapped tighter around her, a vice of cold darkness sinking deeper into her spirit. The tendrils of shadow reached for Zoe, pulling her back. "No!" The word exploded from Sarah's lips. The flashlight flared, lighting a new path in the chaos. Straining against an unseen force, she felt a deep connection, a bond forged in love that transcended fear. "You can do this, Zoe. Trust me." The shadows surged, feeling the power shift again. "No and no." A howl erupted from the dark as Sarah felt more than just fear. She felt anger, furious enough to rattle bones. With every ounce of strength, she aimed the light toward her daughter. The room trembled, shifting and bending, walls whispering in darkened tongues. "You will pay for this," but she felt it, the light growing strong, fierce. She refused to falter. Suddenly, a blinding pulse erupted from the flashlight, enveloping Zoe. It tore the shadows apart. Tendrils shrieked and released their hold, fraying like thin threads under pressure. "Mommy!" Zoe cried, her hand shooting outward, grasping at the now looser grip of the shadows. The silver glimmer surged and expanded, creating a halo, illuminating the darkness like a star illuminating the night sky. For a heartbeat, it felt like victory. Then came the dark laughter again. "You think this is over?" The brightness held for just a moment until the laughter morphed into a bellowing roar, and suddenly, the shadows rallied, engulfing the light. Sarah's heart plummeted as the darkness reformed like liquid, wrapping around them both, squeezing the light until it flickered and dimmed. "Mommy, help!" "Dante, let go!" Zoe shrieked, her voice cracking as the shadows tightened, dragging her deeper. "No!" Sarah's scream rang out, torn between fury and terror. Her world spiraled as she felt the ground shift beneath her. The silver glint was slipping away. As the last remnants of brightness faded, and the overpowering cold clamped down on them, a single thought surged through her mind. What had she awakened? Then the darkness whispered, seductive yet sinister, "You should have listened," and just like that, the shadows surged forward, erasing everything she had fought for. Everything she loved was slipping through her fingers. What was the true cost of defiance? Would she have the strength to fight again, or was she already lost? The shadows coiled tightly around Sarah and Zoe, a grotesque embrace that chilled them to the marrow. Sarah's heart raced, thumping like a war drum in her chest. "Zoe!" she screamed, battling against the darkness that constricted her words. Every second felt like an eternity, her breath coming in short gasps, the pressure around her growing heavier. "Mommy, I'm scared." Zoe's voice was fading, drowned by the laughter echoing from the depths of obscurity. In that moment, Sarah remembered the stories, the warnings whispered in hushed tones, tales of things that lurked in the dark. No, this wasn't just a legend. This was a reality designed to consume her. The darkness had teeth, sharp and menacing, and it was hungry. "Stay with me," Sarah begged, her fingers stretching to grasp Zoe's wrist, but the shadows were relentless. They greedily pulsed, devouring the warmth spilling from her daughter's skin. "Let her go!" Sarah roared, consuming her fear with rage. She swung the flashlight wildly, light spilling everywhere, illuminating fragments of the suffocating dark. Gnarled shapes shrieked, momentarily retreating from the radiance. It was all she had, a flimsy shield against the malevolent force. Then a flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure, cloaked in shadows, emerged from the tumult. Its eyes glowed, hollow and predatory. "Futile," it hissed, its voice a rasping whisper that slithered through the air. "She belongs to us." "No!" Sarah's scream exploded from her throat, raw and primal. She pressed the flashlight against the pressure, refusing to submit. The light coiled around her and Zoe like a lifeline, but the creature only laughed, a sound like cracking ice. The darkness hissed, clawing at her resolve, pulling at her limbs with invisible strings. Suddenly, Zoe's face twisted in pain, her eyes darting between her mother and the glowing figure. "Mommy, please!" The air thickened with dread. Every breath felt like inhaling knives. "I can't hold her much longer." Sarah's voice trembled as she attempted to wrench her daughter free. "Fight, Zoe! Fight the darkness!" But the shadows were merciless. They twisted around Zoe's feet, dragging her downward. A low, sinister growl filled the air, reverberating through her bones. "You think you're stronger than fate? You've awoken us, and now you'll pay." Sarah felt her grip falter, panic clawing at her insides. "No! I won't let you take her." Summoning every ounce of courage, she surged toward the creeping shadows, desperation fueling her. The flashlight flickered once more, a stubborn light in the encroaching black. "Take my hand," she urged Zoe, reaching into the darkness, struggling against the terror that slammed against her chest. "Mommy!" Zoe's trembling voice echoed from far away. The shadows recoiled briefly, and Sarah dared to believe. She felt the connection between them, the thread of love that defied the dark. "Zoe, trust me. Grab my hand." The space between them cracked like fabric, and she could almost see Zoe's determination surfacing, but it flickered. Panic surged once more as she saw the shadows tugging at her daughter's fragile spirit. Fear twisted in Sarah's stomach. The shadows rumbled, angry now, gathering strength. "You can't take her, she is ours." But Sarah pressed on, light pouring from the flashlight, each beam a desperate prayer. "You will not take my child." Just as Zoe's fingers brushed against her own, darkness surged, drowning out the flickering light. With one final throaty scream, the shadows pulled Zoe closer. The weight of the world was crashing down, and Sarah screamed in horror as she felt her daughter slipping away. "Zoe!" And then silence. A suffocating silence that felt alive, pulsing with menace. "What have I done?" An array of eyes appeared in the darkness, thousands flickering to life. "The cost of defiance is steep, Sarah. And you have just begun to pay." Now the shadows began to tighten around her, a world of despair waiting to drag her down. What horrors awaited her in the depths of this nightmare? Would she ever see Zoe again? Or was this the beginning of an even darker fate? It felt like 1,000 hands were crushing her, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Sarah couldn't even scream. The silence was deafening now, heavy, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. Panic surged through her, electrifying her every nerve. She clawed at the darkness, desperate to feel any semblance of reality amidst the relentless void. "Zoe! Please!" Her voice came out as a whisper, choked by despair. The shadows shivered, mocking her plea, and the laughter echoed again louder, more menacing. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, reshaping into grotesque forms. They began to swirl, dancing just beyond the reach of her flashlight. For a moment, she thought she saw Zoe's face among them, distorted in fear, eyes wide and gleaming. It was a trick, her mind betraying her, conjuring her daughter's image just to torment her further. "No! This isn't real!" she yelled, hurling the flashlight toward the darkness. It flickered, illuminating monstrous faces, twisted mouths full of jagged teeth, eyes glistening with hunger. They were not just shadows. They were nightmares made flesh, ancient and cruel. "Join us, Sarah," a voice cooed, soft yet laden with malice. "You can't save her. Embrace the darkness. It feels divine." "Never!" Sarah spat out, her defiance aflame against the engulfing night. But her heart pounded with doubt. Could she really fight this? The shadows recoiled slightly, almost in response to her conviction. A jolt of determination shot through her even as the fear threatened to pull her down. "I will find you, Zoe," she whispered, trying to hold on to the last shred of hope. She took a step, and the shadows surged forward, a wave of cold that licked at her skin. Each breath felt like falling deeper into a dream from which she would never wake. She thought she heard whispers swirling around her, dark secrets brushing against her ears, recounting tales of sorrow, previous victims crying out for salvation. They begged her not to linger too long, warning her of the cost of losing oneself. Then, a flicker of warmth in the cold abyss. More than just a memory, it was a feeling, a mother's love. The flashlight faded again, but the love was unmistakable. "Zoe!" Sarah called, her voice echoing back at her, tinged with desperation. "Mommy!" came a soft sob, almost drowned by the encroaching shadows, yet undeniably there a faint glimmer threaded through the darkness. Sarah ran, her heart racing, each footfall weighted with dread but driven by hope. "I'm coming, sweetheart. Hold on." She felt their tugging influence, shadows grasping at her ankles, slowing her momentum. But she would not be hindered. The air thickened, pulling at her like a heavy blanket. Shapes darted out of the periphery, clawing, clawing, clawing. "You cannot escape what is destined," they hissed, the harmony of their voices blending into a sinister melody. A sudden burst of light erupted again. It cut through the dark, momentarily stunning the entities around her. It was no longer the flashlight, but an inner light, her fury and love alighting a fierce resolve. "You are nothing! You cannot have my daughter!" she shouted, her voice rising above the cacophony of wails. But the shadows answered with a roar, a violent wave overwhelming her. The darkness pressed against her, seeking to pry apart her spirit, to extinguish that flickering flame. "Everything you love will be consumed. You will join her, Sarah!" As the shadows enveloped her, she felt the ground beneath her disappear. She plummeted into blackness, spinning through a void of despair. All at once, a chilling realization settled upon her. Was the darkness feeding on her fear? Would the shadows destroy not just her body, but her spirit too? Then, a piercing scream cut through the clamor, a scream that sounded all too familiar. It echoed in her ears, reverberating in the depths of her being. "Zoe!" As memories flooded back, the echoes of laughter transformed into cries, and Sarah's heart shattered further. In the heart of darkness, would she find her daughter, or would she condemn them both to eternal night? The very fabric of the shadows seemed to pulse with malevolence. And somewhere within it, a long-lost voice beckoned. Could it be Zoe? What price would Sarah pay to uncover the truth of the darkness that claimed her? The darkness clawed at Sarah, swallowing her screams, dragging her deeper into its maw. She could feel the vibrations of 100 whispers, each promising dread and despair. It was a cacophony of lost souls, echoing through the void as she spiraled further down, her heart a heavy drum against the silence. "Zoe!" she cried out again, each syllable carrying a tinge of the desperation that pulsed through her veins. The shadows twisted, swirling around her with a hungry ferocity, as if her fear was the very fuel they thrived upon. Just ahead, through the heavy blackness, she sensed a flicker, a hint of light, shimmering like a dying star. With wild determination, Sarah plunged toward it, pushing back against the constricting shadows. But every inch was a battle. The tendrils reached for her, squeezing tighter, whispering horrors and regrets, each word a dagger to her spirit. "You're losing her," they taunted, their voices harmonizing into a sickening lullaby. "You can't save what's already gone." "No!" she shouted, defiance sparking anew. She would not succumb. Not now. Not when Zoe was so close. As she neared the flicker, it transformed into a doorway, a shivering veil of dim light promising escape. Without a second thought, Sarah burst through, and the moment she did, the air changed. It was no longer dense with despair but crisp and tinged with fear, like stepping into a frigid room after being trapped in sweltering heat. She found herself in an empty room, walls lined with age-darkened photographs, their subjects trapped in moments of eerie stillness. A chill ran through her as she recognized their faces, twisted in expressions of terror and sorrow. The haunting images lived quietly, yet their eyes spoke volumes, pleading for freedom. One photo caught her breath. A child, no older than Zoe, stood at the center, arms raised like she was beckoning. The girl's gaze was vacant. The shadows swelled behind her, dancing in sinister delight. It was as if the darkness had claimed her soul long ago. "Zoe," Sarah whispered, and panic rapidly pierced her heart again. Where was her daughter? Was Zoe one of them? The doorframe shuddered as shadows pulsed around it, hungry to reclaim their prey. In a frantic rush, Sarah turned back to the doorway, but a form blocked her path, a towering shadow with an ever-shifting face, features blending into each other like smoke. "You seek her, but that's not why you're here," it growled, the voice a twisted amalgamation of the whispers that had tormented her. "What do you mean?" She could hardly breathe, trapped not just in fear but in confusion. "Your heart is heavy with choices," it hissed, moving closer, its breath cold against her skin. "To save one, the other must be sacrificed." "No!" Desperation clawed at her throat. "I want to choose. I need both." The figure laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the room. "You believe love can defy fate? You will learn how wrong you are." With each word, the temperature dropped, her vision misting as frost crept up the walls. Panic spurred her feet. She dashed toward the window, hoping to find salvation outside. When she reached it, the reflection staring back was not just hers, it was the countless faces from the photographs, eyes wide with terror. The moment shattered as the figure lunged, swift and merciless. Sarah ducked just in time, stumbling backward into the room. The shadows surged forth, and she could feel their cold fingers tightening around her waist like an ice-cold vice. "Zoe!" she screamed, feeling her spirit start to dim, caught between shadows and decisions that loomed like iron bars around her heart. Just then, a familiar echo filled the air. "Mommy, help me!" The voice was clearer now, rising out of the chaos, and the floor beneath her pulsed with a heartbeat. "Zoe!" she called, desperation mingling with determination. The shadows hesitated, but not for long. In that moment, Sarah felt the weight of her choices settle like a heavy cloak. Would she risk everything for her daughter, even if it meant entering the very depths of darkness? The question lingered, settling in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. What would she sacrifice to save Zoe? Before Sarah could gather her thoughts, the shadows surged forward, drowning the last flicker of hope, pulling her into a vortex of black. And as her scream tore through the void, another echoed behind her, a new voice, ominously familiar. Was someone else trapped in this nightmare? The shadows, hungry and restless, whispered secrets that hinted at far darker truths waiting to be uncovered. The darkness wrapped around Sarah like a vice, each breath growing more shallow as the cold seeped into her bones. "Zoe!" she screamed, her voice trembling against the tempest of shadows. The walls pulsed, answering with a chorus of whispers, a cacophony of lost souls weaving together, ensnaring her in their relentless grip. Then she heard it again, a faint cry, echoing through the abyss, pulling her closer. "Mommy, help me!" Zoe's voice filled her mind, a beacon of hope breaking through the suffocating gloom. "No! I will save you!" Sarah surged forward, heart racing with purpose, battling the dark that clawed at her ankles. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet the thought of leaving Zoe behind ignited a fire in her soul. As she pressed deeper into the shadows, Sarah felt the oppressive weight of despair battle against the warmth of love that surged in her chest. The room twisted, barely holding its shape, as if the very air conspired to consume her spirit. "You can't have her!" she shouted, raising the flashlight defiantly, its beam a fragile barricade against the advancing dark. But the shadows laughed, their hissing voices like steel scraping against bone. "You think light can weaken us? You are wrong!" They surged forward, darkness crawling toward her like a tidal wave, hungry and eager to swallow. With every flicker of the flashlight, the grotesque figures emerged from the dark, faces twisted in anguish, eyes empty and cold. "Join us," they whispered, extending their hands like vines tainted with venom. Each step she took was a battle against their grasp, but resolve cemented Sarah's spirit. "Zoe!" she called again, lunging through the thickening dark. "I'm right here." In the distance, she glimpsed the shimmer of light, more than a reflection. It felt like a pulse, thumping in rhythm with her own heart. It beckoned her forward, a lifeline in the chaos. Just as she began to step toward it, the shadows coalesced around her, forming a menacing silhouette. "You cannot chase the light," it hissed. A chill swept through her, but she pushed harder, clawing her way past the wailing spirits, propelled by a fierce determination. "Zoe!" The whispers faded momentarily, and in that brief clarity, a flicker caught her eyes. Zoe stood trapped, suspended between realms, the love they shared illuminating her frail figure. "Mommy, I'm so scared." Her voice trembled, like a candle wavering against a harsh wind. Fierce joy surged through Sarah's heart. "Zoe! Hold on to me! I'm coming!" Summoning every ounce of strength, she surged forward. The shadows shrieked, their forms lunging toward her, but she wouldn't flinch. "Not today!" she screamed, her voice rebounding throughout the chaos. The flashlight burst with renewed vigor, illuminating each face, revealing glimpses of fear that haunted her nightmares. "Help me, please!" Zoe's eyes grew wider, the shadows threatening to engulf her. Sarah's heart thundered against her ribcage, raw desperation fueling her steps. "Zoe! Reach for me!" In that crucial moment, warmth surged through Sarah's body, igniting her resolve. She felt the strength of all the mothers before her, a lineage of fierce love bolstering her spirit. The shadows recoiled, hissing furiously, as if irritated by the light. "I will not let you take her!" Sarah shouted, flinging her arm wide, commanding the shadows to retreat. They pulsated, writhing as light grew and enveloped her. Zoe reached between the barrier, stretching out, fingers grasping for connection. "Mommy, I can't hold on. Just a little longer." The world spun around them. She finally felt Zoe's fingers brush against hers, and in that instant, the bond bonded into an unbreakable chain. "Grab my hand," she urged desperately. As the shadows surged forward, grasping, clawing, a fierce light erupted around them, forging a sanctuary against the chilling hold of despair. The flashlight illuminated a path, revealing a solid doorway shimmering beyond the chaos, the exit from this nightmare. "Together," Sarah urged, fear battling against hope. With one final push, they yanked back against the weight of darkness. Time stretched, consciousness teetered on the brink, as shadows howled with fury, but the warmth of love surged, propelling them forward. The moment they broke through into the light, darkness shrieked around them, disintegrating like ash in the wind. The entity's voice faded to nothingness, leaving only echoes of the tormented cries behind. Bright light enveloped them, warmth flooding Sarah's senses, and for a moment, it felt like coming home. "Mommy!" Zoe wrapped her arms around Sarah, trembling with fear yet alive. In that embrace, the weight of loss lifted, clearing the shadows that once clouded their peace. "I've got you," Sarah whispered, holding her little girl tight, savoring the moment, every heartbeat a melody of resilience. In disbelief, Sarah gazed at Zoe's familiar face, no longer marred by darkness. The storm outside raged on, but within the light they were safe. "Are you okay?" Zoe asked, the warmth of innocence returning. "Now that I have you, I'm okay," Sarah replied, her heart swelling with relief, every terrifying second behind them. Together they stepped away from the abyss, leaving the horrors of Cedar Falls Memorial Hospital behind. They would heal, and together, they would rise above whatever shadows lay ahead, knowing that as long as they held each other close, the darkness would never prevail. This was a new dawn, a brighter tomorrow, a chance to reclaim the life they deserved. And as they made their way into the light, hope glimmering on the horizon, Sarah's heart whispered a silent promise: no matter what, she would protect Zoe, for love conquers all. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything. Let's grow this community together.